Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection of humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Guthrie.
And today we're talking about, I don't even know what you'd call the title of this. Do you have a perfect title?
No.
Yeah, I didn't have a perfect title.
We're going to have to come up with it. Well, by the time people are listening to this, I guess it'll have a title because we have to give it a title.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have the idea. I just don't know what the title is.
Let's call it going for the A- project.
I don't really like that
You don't
title
like
at
that?
all. No.
Okay. Why?
Well, because sometimes you don't want to.
Oh.
I mean,
right.
so this whole thing is based on a blog post I wrote that probably no one has read.
Someone read it because someone wrote how they thought it was a great idea. So
Okay,
I know of at least two people.
some
Two people read it besides you and me.
I have the
think it
analytics
was
on
read.
it, more than two
All right,
people.
yeah. How many people read it? Come on.
I'm not gonna say.
Oh, okay.
So, the analytics on our blog, by the way, which is blog.theteenw.com, are very funny because, like a lot of things that I guess go viral, stuff like that, there are a couple blog posts, just like a handful, like six, that get the vast majority of our traffic, that are just linked to everywhere that people really. So, like the top 10 list of like all the psychology books you need to read, like we get the hundreds of thousands of views, and the other stuff maybe not so much, but okay, so the title of this blog was according to the blog post, is increase your work efficiency in 5 seconds or less, which is a tantalizing lead, but
I wrote the title.
I think my here, give me just 1 second here. I bet you I have the original title.
Your original title.
Yeah, is okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Become more efficient at work by rating your projects A+ or A-.
Which is very descriptive, but not very enticing.
Well, I think it's great.
And a little too long.
What?
So it's an interesting idea that, I think it's an interesting idea, and I also find it interesting that I hadn't ever thought of this. And I mean, let's be honest. I've been doing projects a lot longer than you have. And if we added up the number of, quote, projects, which could mean anything, right?
Yeah.
From cleaning out your filing cabinet to developing, a course to programming a new piece of software. I mean, project can be anything. But the number of projects I've done in my lifetime probably higher than the number of projects you've done in your lifetime because I'm older than you are. I mean, let's just be honest, right? But even given that, the hundreds and thousands of things I've done, I've never thought about this idea.
So, yeah. So basically, I'm an econ major. Efficiency is what I like to do. This is basically how I've kind of thought about life for a long time, even since high school. I'm a really smart guy, but and never,
very humble, I can tell.
Yeah.
You just said you're a very smart guy. Now, go ahead.
But
I interrupted you.
But that said, I actually never got the best grades, and I just went to a regular old small public high school. I didn't go to some fancy math and science thing where everyone goes to, it's a great college. Yeah, just so like, when the standardized testing season came around,
yeah,
like I got the highest ACT score, I think.
You did.
Yeah, in the class, which was a validation of my intelligence. I was not in the top. I don't even think I was in the top 20% when it came to GPA. And in college, the same, and in law school, the same. I was in the.
You're an underachiever.
And that's the thing. I'm not quite sure. I was certainly I was in the, top half, top 3/4, in the 70th percentile. But, for you would imagine, right, given just the raw whatever,
Yeah,
I should
you're a smart
excel.
guy. You
I
should
should excel, and
It's
I did
very
not.
interesting, yeah, because I remember a point at one. I remember a conversation we had. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I do remember the conversation. And we were talking, and you were in school, and I don't know if this was when you were in college or when you were in law school, and you said something like, "Well, I could get an A in this class, but it's not worth the work I would have to do."
Yeah, that was definitely college.
And I remember I was thinking, what? What a bizarre thing to say, because I'm like an overachiever, like I need approval.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever needs to get done to get the best possible grade.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
grade is really important to me. And I was kind of shocked at your statement and didn't really understand it. But this comes back to this idea. So basically, your advice that you're going to talk about in this podcast and that you wrote about in the blog is, bad advice at people about how to be an underachiever.
It's great advice. So I think, okay, so the other, and then I was I was taking a shower. This is a shower thought. And I was like, and all of a sudden it kind of dawned on me how to explain this.
Yeah.
Um,
So go ahead. Let's
okay.
dive in.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So the main thought is that, and it honestly comes a little bit from back to Godfather Kahneman, just a little.
Father Kahneman.
It's 'cause
Daniel Kahneman, who we talked about in our last
the
episode,
Godfather.
right?
I'm just gonna call him the Godfather. these days.
Godfather Kahneman. Okay.
And so
Daniel Kahneman, who's he won a Nobel Prize.
we don't have to do this. Everyone who listens to this podcast
Maybe they
knows
haven't
who
listened
Kahneman.
to it, and he wrote the
Oh
book
my God.
Thinking Fast and Slow. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, he won a Nobel Prize.
Yes.
So he talked about system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking, right?
Yeah.
Where one is light and effortless, and it's just kind of the normal place in which you stand, and one is like effortful. And so maybe I drew a little bit from that, though it's totally different because you're doing when you're studying, you're definitely in system 2 the whole time. Anyways, so the general idea is that there are projects that basically, if you think about like agile, okay, which you're whatever thoughts aside. So this idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, I am not an agile expert by any stretch of the imagination. You have the minimal viable product.
Well, that's not agile. That would be lean UX.
What's agile?
Lean startup.
Sorry, what's agile?
What would be the agile philosophy?
Yeah.
The agile philosophy would, well, if you're talking about not agile UX but agile software development.
Yes.
Well, there's Scrum and there's Kanban, but basically agile is about breaking the work up into small pieces so that you can manage the small piece, and instead of working on big pieces of the project. No, you're talking about lean startup concepts.
I'll just skip. I'm way over my head. I'm just going to ignore all that. So basically, the thought is that there are certain things that you can do really fast and really effectively, the bare bones of it, and so, I'll give an example. Okay.
Yeah.
So, let's say I gave you some office supplies, okay?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I told you, right, paper and cardboard, and think of it like as like a group bonding experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
like
I told
one of the exercises we do in our workshops or something.
Exactly,
Okay.
right? And I say, okay, guys, you have, with these common household materials, right? You have 20 minutes to build a house.
Okay.
All right, and that group, our group A, right? If we're doing an experiment, works on the house in 20 minutes. Okay. Group B, I say you have 40 minutes. You have twice as much time to build a house with these materials. Okay.
Okay.
And at the end of the time, you'll look at the houses, and they'll look pretty similar from a wide-angle view. If you needed to live, if you were a small person, like literally like a couple inches tall, right? Because these are made out of construction materials, right? You could live in the 20-minute house, and your life would be effectively the same as if you lived in the 40-minute house. The 40-minute house will look a little nicer. It'll have more details, all this kind of stuff, right? But 20 minutes, you make the 4 walls, you cut out the windows, you put a roof on it, you put a door on it. You're done in 20 minutes. And so that is an A- project.
The 20-minute house.
20-minute house. And again, I should just draw from I should really just draw from the blog post itself, right? So the idea is to get the job done fast, efficient, solid. It doesn't mean it's sloppy work. You don't want to be, too rushed, but it's good work. It's efficient. And
it meets the criteria.
It meets the criteria
for success, whatever that criteria
right?
was.
And people are happy. The project is finished, and you move on. So the goal is to maximize quality and effort. So when you're measuring marginal effort returns, right? So of course, this the econ part of me has made an equation here, right? So if you max the variable, effort, the returns of effort. If you think of an idea of quality per effort unit, right? You just max that variable, and once it kind of starts to dip, then you stop, and you're done. So that's the econ view. That probably made no sense talking about it, but it makes sense in my head. And so then you maximize your skills, right? You do what you're best at, and you work as quickly and efficient as you can, and you get the project done, and then you move on. Okay. And so that's an A- project. And when you do something with A-, you free up time for more and better stuff. Because let's say that same group that I gave you the 20-minute house, right? I said, make a 20-minute house. And then I say, okay, great. Now you have another 20 minutes, make another house. So in 40 minutes, you've now made two
houses.
Decent houses. And you look at the group that had 40 minutes, they've made one pretty great house. So in the same amount of time, you've almost doubled the really important part of the house, which is the structural integrity, right? The walls and the ceiling and the doors and the floor, right? So you've done you've done twice as much, right? If you're the boss looking down at who's the better team, well, one team has 2 houses and one team has 1 house. The 2 houses is better because perfection in this instance does not matter.
Yeah.
And so when I was in school, right, this is an A- project, an A- grade in school. I could have the people I knew who got the A pluses, right? They studied forever. They had to make sure they knew every last little thing, so they got every question correct. They did extra credit. They talked to professors after class. They were working on supplemental materials because you got to know everything. So you got to get every detail perfect. I just did basically a good job that was good enough to get an A-, which it wasn't that hard. And then I stopped. And I played basketball or I did something else. I was talking to my sister, and I was like, hey, because I'm 2 years older. And I asked her, growing up, I guess, she was there the entire time I was in high school. And I asked her, can you ever remember me doing homework at home in high school? Once, ever. And she responded that she could not remember a single instance in which I was like working on homework at home. You know, I finished it all at school, or I did it in like 15 minutes at home and I was done. So that's that A- efficiency, which in one case is maybe lazy and underachieving, and in another case maybe it's really smart. And in the case of high school or college, you know, it probably is underachieving, because what was I doing in my free time? You know, I don't know. I was playing basketball. I was just goofing off. I was wasting time. But in the work environment, when you're on a team and you're trying to be as productive as possible, this all of a sudden starts to make a lot of sense. So the second project, which I'd like to differentiate, is called an A+ project. And so these are projects that require you and your team to go above and beyond. So again, they take twice as much time and effort as an A-.
So are you saying, though, that there are times when it's that it's good to do an A+ project?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're not saying that everything should be an A-.
Definitely not. Not. But
so when do you do the A+ effort?
Well, let me describe what an A+ is, and then I'll tell you when to do it. So again, it takes twice as much time and effort as an A-. And at the end, right, of the project, you and your team, you're super proud. These are cases when it comes to pride, you've done the best that you can do. You pour over every detail, and basically the goal is to blow everyone away with the quality, ingenuity, and perfection of the end result. Again, from the econ perspective, you want to maximize your quality variable alone, not quality over effort. So you disregard the amount of effort, and basically you just maximize quality until quality is negative, because eventually the more work and time you put into something will make it worse eventually, right? You start second guessing things and redoing stuff, and eventually you just gotta. But until that happens, right? Just quality, and if you just make it your passion, and at the end everyone will feel the passion in the result. So when do you do an A+ project? I'll give you a couple great examples. So if there's a keystone, capstone project of some sort. So let's say you're in a marketing agency and you're coming up with like the campaign of the year for whatever client you have, right? This is they're making a Super Bowl ad. Okay, this isn't some filler in Golf Magazine. That's an A+ project, because when if you knock it out of the park, if the quality is incredible, it will pay dividends forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, right? Everyone in the team, oh, you were the guy on the so-and-so project, right? Wow, that was like really great. People can, it pays dividends for years to come, because people think back on the quality, and they kind of, that's the, when they think about you and the work that you and your team does, that's the capstone, keystone project. Okay. Another example would be like a Pixar film. Okay. So Pixar is a company that traditionally, I mean, they're owned by Disney now, but for years and years and years and years, right, their whole thing was, we only make good movies. We don't care if we have to scrap it. So like, I think Toy Story famously, they like finished it and then they like stopped and started over and rewrote like the entire movie, because it wasn't good enough. Yeah. So, right, we're not going to release things just to release things. It was something like that. I think it was maybe Toy Story 2. It was one of the Toy Stories. Right? We only make the best movies, right? So everything we do is going to be A+, because that's our reputation, that's our brand. You can think of certain customer service departments where, we're not processing refunds or returns, right, to go as fast as possible. We're a customer service focused, or it's the company really, 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 truly does believe in amazing customer service. So everything we do, or customer service for like premium customers, right? So everything we do is A+, right? We go above and beyond in any situation. I was talking to someone who had who was a platinum Marriott member, lifetime platinum. Okay. So, I don't know if you know the Marriott reward system.
Yeah.
Lifetime platinum is a pretty good gig to have. Okay.
It basically means you travel too much.
Yes, and you have platinum status for life. But you get, but yeah, the level that you get is so. He was traveling somewhere, and he wasn't at a Marriott. He was just like in a city, and he left.
Yeah.
Like he had like a championship hat that he really valued, and he left it on a tour bus, some random tour bus or something, right? Okay, and he flew back, to Chicago, and got back. It's like, oh my God, I lost my hat, and so he calls the Marriott in the city in which he stayed.
Even though he didn't stay at the Marriott.
Yeah, he did. He didn't stay at that one. He just calls the Marriott and said, "Hey, I left my hat on this bus.
No.
Do you think you can help me out?"
And they found it.
I'm Marriott Platinum Lifetime, and like 2 weeks later, he gets a package in the mail with his championship hat. They had tracked down the company and gone to the lost and found, and then airmailed it to him.
Because you're saying that's the brand of the.
He's
platinum.
He's lifetime platinum. He gets A. They get A+ every single time. Right. So that's right, and that's a story you remember, and that's the experience that wow, right. So in a lot of those cases, you really do want to put in A+ work sometimes. But
when you need to really.
Yes.
When for whatever reason it's got to be the best and you have to wow them. So you're saying
or a dissertation.
What?
A dissertation.
So you're saying that when you start a project, whatever it is,
mm-hmm.
you would then decide.
Yeah.
I'm either gonna this is an A+ project, and therefore as I'm planning it and carrying out, I have to plan for certain things. The time frame, the materials,
mm-hmm.
the team. Or this is an A- project. It's still going to be very, very good. It's still going to be successful. However, you would plan it differently? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it's about, you could plan it differently. And again, it depends on the size of your team, right? And the way you do projects and who's making decisions, and there's a lot of variables going on. But in general, I think it's the message that you send.
That you send to the team
to
as
the
you're
team.
working on it.
And
the decisions you make as you go along. So
correct.
Maybe not just planning, but as you're going along.
Absolutely.
There's so I don't remember what this is called, but there's a whole management thing, and I don't remember who says this either, but the idea that 20% of the product or the project, I think this is right, ends up taking 80% of the effort.
Right.
And that's that, A+ edge, which you may not want to do. You may not want to spend all that extra time.
So here's the problem, and we've talked about this, and it's definitely the case, right? Where there's corporate culture is weird, and every company has their own corporate culture, but often, most of the time, there's a lot of I want to make sure I say this correctly, but there's a lot of false things that go on in the corporate world. And
you mean like non-realistic?
Everyone's kidding themselves, but we know we're all telling a lie together.
But we're all gonna keep telling.
Yeah, it's
a
doublethink kind of in the right.
Yeah.
So one of them, right, is that all the work we do is A+. Right?
Yeah.
Everyone here, if you don't turn in the best product, if you're not working really hard, right, on to the higher levels, right?
Yeah.
You're not doing a good job, right? If you're not all the workers have to be like really going busy bees and like everything's the best and like we don't, right? Like blah blah blah.
Right, we don't cut any corners.
And then they give you the staff to not be able to
they
do
give
that.
you the time and budget and staff.
There's no time.
And there's no way
and
that's going to be
the
A+.
people on the ground level, as I'm sure everyone listening can attribute. Yeah, they're like, right, they got to get the project done, but the client isn't getting back to them on the emails, and so they got to wait forever, and then it's like super late, and like, so like, and then the expectations are too high, and at the end of the day, it gets down to the wire, you slap some stuff together, it's pretty good, you send it
All
out
right,
the door.
well, yeah. So what's the danger? What's wrong? What's wrong? If we all right, we all know that not every project we do in our personal or our work lives is really going to be an A+ project.
Right.
But what's the danger? What's the problem with, your company saying, "Oh, we, everything we do is A+." I mean, what's wrong with that?
And again, you can say it, but you just can't but if you expect it, then you get in trouble. So here's the problem. So what often happens in most projects is that you end up getting A projects. And A projects sound like a good thing, but it's actually the worst of both worlds. You only needed to do A- work. If you would have turned in A-, in fact, if you would have turned in like 2 A- projects instead of like an A project, your boss, or even an A+ project, your boss would be super happy, right? Because everyone's super busy. If you just do more and are more productive, most of the time, that's better in most business situations.
Okay.
So what happens is that you try to do A+ work, but you don't really have the green light.
You can't.
There's not enough time. There's not enough people.
Right.
Your boss is, they're on a schedule. You got to get it to the client.
So you end up doing A work. That's better than A-, isn't it?
Yeah, right. So you put all your time and resources in one thing. You can't get that thing to actually be really good, and then you run out of time for the other stuff you have to do, and then you'll ship out C+ work, right? Oh my God, we have no time. Just get it done, get it out the door.
So it ends up actually not being A work.
So one project might be A, and because that's A, you sacrifice the quality of a bunch of other projects. So your overall quality, if you do everything A-, is actually higher, and your productivity is higher too, because you've wasted all this time getting the project up to A, and no one needed it. Like, the client wouldn't have noticed it if it was A-. The boss would have, if you give him both projects to compare, right? Maybe it's like, oh, well, this project, you've done a better job if you do it twice. But if you only do it one time, like, he's like, okay, this is great. Okay, you've done lots of them. Wonderful.
So that's one of the dangers then of kidding yourself, of saying, we're going to do A+ work, but everyone knows that you're really not going to do A+. You can't do A+ work for everything all the time. And so rather than facing that and then making some good trade-offs and some good decisions, people end up trying to do the A+ work, end up with A and
no time.
C work.
Yeah.
And they're frustrated.
And they're frustrated because they've tried, but the rest of the team hasn't come together. And when you set those expectations, you're setting yourself up for failure. So let's just assume, right? If you tell your team, right, okay, we need to do this and it has to be perfect, and this is what we expect from you, right? No mistakes, okay? And let's say you're putting a project together, right? And you do your part, but the other part of the team, like, they just didn't get it together in time. Right? Yeah. Now you're frustrated at them because they are slacking and blah, blah, blah. Right? Whereas if everyone kind of understands, okay, we're just trying to get, good enough and get, 80% of the way there, and then we'll figure it out. I feel,
it's great. You know what this reminds me of a little bit? Sometimes when I would teach about user experience and usability, we would say I'd walk people through the exercise of deciding what success meant. Okay?
Yeah.
So you're creating this product, website, software, an app, whatever it is. And you decide ahead of time what is our criteria that says this is a usable product, or this is a product with excellent, user experience. Like, what would that mean? How could you measure that? And so then we get into, okay, the person would be able to, use the software to do these 4 tasks And then you push for, okay, but what are the criteria? Like, let me give you an example. Let's say you had an app for submitting expense reports. And so with the app, the idea is that, you take pictures of your receipts and enter some information, and then you can send it on for approval to, whoever needs to approve your expense reports, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to decide, what is our idea of user experience success? At what point do we say, hey, this has a great user experience, or this app is usable? And so you'd say, all right, so we're going to take someone who is a frequent traveler and has done expense reports before with with a spreadsheet or on a form or something, and they need to be able to use the app and submit their expense report for a typical trip, and they need to be able to fill this out and do their expense report in within 5 minutes, and with no more than 3 errors.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, how about 2 minutes and no errors? And what I would always say is, if you are really going to say that something has to be done in the absolute minimal amount of time that is humanly possible and with no errors whatsoever, you can assume that it's going to take you twice as long to design and develop that product. It takes twice as long to take it from 3 or 2 errors down to no errors.
Yeah.
And people go, why is that? And it's like, well, because if you really mean that there never can be any errors, my goodness, that you're going to have to test that thing. You're going to have to test and redesign and test and redesign, and then you're probably going to have to take the person, you're going to have to train him and train him and train him. And we only it's silly, right? Why would you need an expense report? They never press a wrong button at any point.
Right.
Now, there are times when you expect 0 errors. So, for instance, if you're designing the control panel on a jumbo jet, if you're designing the control panel in the space station,
if you're making nuclear launch code buttons, A+ project,
right? Or in a nuclear reactor, right? I mean, these are times when you say no errors, but that means, you have to assume is, if you're going to say that, it's going to take you twice as long to develop and implement that product. And so I guess I've been talking about A- and A+ products and projects for many years and just never realized it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and me too. I finally came up with a way to finally phrase it.
But you I think apply it in a much broader way, right? Because you're applying it to not just product development, but work that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, or just, like I said, things in your personal life.
Yeah, I mean, so and I think honestly, do you have another thought?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I really think a lot of it comes down to unrealistic expectations about certain things. There's a certain level amount of this privilege and these expectations that accompany how we go through the world, and because accepting the truth is too hard, so we pretend. So in the workplace, right, everyone has to pretend that everyone actually loves their job, and that the work they do they really care about, and that everyone gets along, and that everything goes really well. And that's
not true.
Right? Because you just have people are people, and they're messy, and they're thrown together, and there are cliques, and there are drama in the workplace, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing in every work environment. And there are egos and personalities, and so but in order to do true A- work, and not only do A- work, but have everyone on board, be all right, we're doing A- work this week, right? We're just you have to. It takes a level of acceptance that some people might not care about the job. Some people, they're just they're gonna phone it in because you know what? They don't really care about these reports. They don't really care about their boss. Like, yeah, we're on a team, and sometimes we don't do the best work. We're not great all the time.
But you're not saying that A- work means that people don't care.
No, not at all. All I'm saying is that you have to basically you have to accept death. Is what you have to do.
Wait. What? How did we get there? Wait a minute. There's a leap here. Did I fall asleep? Did I miss part of the conversation? You have to accept death.
So we as humans, we pretend that we just we're gonna live forever, right?
Yes.
And that everything's perfect, and we just don't want to look at any of the negative parts of the world.
Wrong.
Right. Yeah. And so we, especially in behavioral economics, we do weird, irrational things and do decisions that are inefficient, blah, 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 because it's simpler to just do the inefficient thing than to overcome the mental hurdle of accepting these things we don't want to think about. And much in the same way of the workplace, my own personal opinion. So it's easier just for everyone to accept inefficient and work where their expectations are going to be bad than it is for people to set realistic expectations, because everyone's trying to impress their boss, and it has to do with
each other, or
yeah.
I mean, it's
but it
not
has to do
just
with
impress
trust
your
and
boss.
communication and who has everyone goes to the corporate meeting, right? And everyone's like, hey, check out this work we did. It was okay, nothing too impressive. Right, and you give it the when everyone gives a presentation to like the VP of whatever shows up, right? It's like, oh yeah, we did this amazing thing, and look at all these gains, and like everything has to be like growing and great, and shiny lights and roses, and so then you'll come into problems, and so you have to accept that, we're just kind of sometimes we do a repetitive task, and it doesn't have to be perfect every time. And like it, and that's fine. But you have to accept the fallacy of your team and of humans. That's why I said you have to accept it.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what this starts to sound like?
Am I creating my own religion?
No, not at all. I mean, because
Well,
one of the things I do when I'm not working at our business is I teach and practice mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole premise of that is to accept whatever's going on instead of this mindset of I'm going to ignore that it's not going the way I want it to go. I'm going to pretend that it is. Yeah, you just got to accept what is. And it's interesting because a lot of times when I'm talking about this, like in a class, people will say to me, I mean, I've had people get really upset about this and say, and they don't understand how you can, if you want things to be different or better, then how can you possibly accept how they are now? But, basically mindfulness says, hey, it is what it is. I mean, there's no use pretending it's not the way it is, because it is the way it is.
So imagine this situation, okay? You go, whoever's listening out there, okay? You go to your boss, and they say, hey, what's the status of this project, right?
Yeah.
So your boss he's not working with you on the team, or he or she is just, they're your boss,
they're
right?
managing it.
They're managing, right?
Right.
So you go into a meeting, corner office, you close the door. Okay?
Yeah.
And boss says, okay, how's it going? And you say, we didn't do that great of a job. We did okay. We didn't try particularly hard on this project.
This would be really bad.
And then we moved on to the next one. And the boss and in an ideal world, the boss would say, wow, good job. That's great. go and
right,
do the
this
next
sounds-
project that much faster, right? Well,
Yeah.
because right, and if the boss did that, and if the team did that, right, everyone has to be on the same page. You would get so much more done.
But this is a problem because everybody has to buy into
Right,
it.
but
now,
but people can't imagine that world. You have to go in and it's like, oh, it went great, and
went
everyone
great.
loved it, and blah blah blah.
Or the other interesting thing you have to do is you have to say, explain the reality of it didn't go great, but then you have to find
turn it.
someone
Yeah,
to
yeah.
blame.
Or turn it in some way. Yeah.
Remember when we were at that talk and that guy used the term, "Don't be a scapegoat farmer."
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever told you that I tracked down the person and emailed with the person in like Ireland or something that invented that term.
Oh yeah, I think I do remember that.
But anyway, the idea is that, and if it's not perfect, you have to spend an enormous amount of time and energy figuring out
selling a
who
narrative.
to blame,
Yeah.
and amassing the evidence, right? Which is another huge waste of time and energy, right? Doing that.
Right.
But one of the things that I think we need to talk about that is because we've been kind of saying, the whole team has to be on board with it being an A- project.
Well, it depends on the project. If
And
you're doing it
you're-
yourself, it's a lot easier to get the whole team on board.
Right, because it's a team of one.
Good team.
And you're, and if you have a manager or boss, they need to be on board, and maybe even stakeholders on board. But I want to talk about getting yourself on board, because I think that's one of the biggest obstacles to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that, and I don't know that you totally understand how big an obstacle this is, because
because
it sounds like your general tendency
yes
is to think this way, right?
Yes.
I mean, you operated with this model before you identified
for years
the model.
and years and years, and it's one of the reasons I liked economics, because it's like
It gave you an excuse for why you were going for the A+.
it was very cathartic as to why I
Yes.
failed in my classes. But
you didn't fail literally.
No, I didn't
but
fail. But
I think a lot of people and they have a self story
right.
about absolutely always doing the best that they can, and that means going for the A+. And in fact, I've had conversations with many people in the world of design, in the world of user experience and usability, and I believe there's a certain type of person that goes into this field, and it typically is the perfectionist who, I mean, not always, but a lot of time you'll find people in these areas of design and user experience and usability that have this idea of perfection and have that as an ideal.
So what they need to do is they need to find a career where they can excel. So I know, so our business cards, we contract with a local letterpress shop. Shout out to Hysterical Press. They basically what they do. Think of like really, really expensive weddings, right? Like the most expensive weddings, and they have just these most immaculate wedding invitations.
Yeah.
Letterpressed, and there's bows and ribbons and right.
And that's what our business cards look like.
Our business cards are really nice, but no, not our business cards don't do that. But
right.
But like, so all that stuff, their reputation and their whole thing is based on every single scrap of paper we do is perfect.
Yeah.
And so all they do all day is A+ work. And they're a bunch of perfectionists, who sit around and if it's not that they want to do A+ work and they're like forcing themselves to do it, that's like how they operate. Like if things are not like perfect, it really, really bugs them, because that's just the type of people they are. But they're in an industry where that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But most people aren't.
Most people aren't. And I know that when I've mentored people in the field of user experience, and because it's interesting what you're saying, because I know a lot of people in user experience and usability that um, that I find there's people that have been in it for a long time, and then there's people that like think they want to get into it and they try it and then they let go. They It's like, I can't do this, and one reason is they have this idea of perfection, and especially as a user experience person, or I mean, a designer on a project can tell you, you're just going to get beaten down if that's what you're expecting. It's like, because you come to feel that if your ideas are not implemented, and they never are 100%, never ever, right?
No, because the
You're-
end goal of the people above you is to make as much money as quickly as possible.
Or just stuff happens, or stuff comes up, or something about the technology that's really, not going to be worthwhile to do it that way. So or even as a consultant, you say to them, look, this is what would be best, but for a variety of reasons, they don't want to do it, or they can't do it, or whatever. If you feel like, if they don't implement my ideas 100%, I have failed, you can't do this work very long. I mean, you'll just feel like you've been beaten to a pulp, and
It's a
you
rejection.
It is, and you
of
burn
you
out,
and your
and
work and your
it
thoughts and
is,
ideas.
and you feel like
You feel
I'm not any.
bitter.
Yeah, either I'm not any good, or you might feel that I can't have an impact.
They're not listening to me.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people who think they want to be in the field, and then they can't handle it, and they leave and go back to what they were doing before. But what I tell them is there anything? I'll say to them, is this product any better in any way because you were involved in it? Like, is there any way that it's a better product or better for the people who have to use it because you were involved? And if the answer is yes, then you have succeeded.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to redefine
Mm.
what success is if you want to keep doing it.
This is interesting. It sounds a lot like if you read kind of online people who do like relationship counseling,
Yeah.
right? There's this idea in society that unless your relationship lasts until you die and nothing bad ever happens, and there's never cheating and there's never fighting, and it's just like this perfect thing,
yeah.
the relationship has failed,
Yeah.
right? You failed as a relationship, blah blah blah, right? When of
Yeah.
course the reality is, well, if there was like good things that happen, and then you like go your separate ways, that was actually a success. But there's this feeling again when it comes to relationships or it comes to work that like if it's not totally perfect 100% of the time, then
it's a failure.
It's a failure, right? Even though lots of good may have come out of it, and so but people, and if you hold yourself up to that high level of expectation, you're gonna have a bad time, like because it's completely unrealistic expectation. Like you're just always gonna be sad and dissatisfied, and what's wrong with me?
I think this has to do with the idea of what failure is. Just the idea of failure. I was reading about at one point the difference in the philosophy of education in schools in the U.S. versus some schools in other countries, specifically some Asian countries. And the idea being that, in the U.S., if let's say you were a third grader and it's math class, and the teacher has you come up to the front of the room and gives you a math problem to do, right? And you don't do it successfully, like you can't work it out. You're standing in front of the room and you can't work it out.
People start throwing tomatoes, right? Cabbages.
Well, I don't know, but in the U.S., you would feel bad, right? I failed, and you'd go back and sit, and you'd feel like a failure, and you would think that other people would think you had failed. But in some classrooms in some part of the world, this is a regular part of the curriculum, and the idea being that everyone learns from the experience, and they don't even use the word failure. It's not that they want people to fail so that everyone can learn. They don't think of it as failure. They think of it as problem solving. They think of it as learning. And I know that I take objection sometimes to the, because some of in product development, the phrase that'll go around is, you need to fail fast, right? And it's, learn from your failure, fail fast and fail often, because then, it's a form of iteration. And I like the philosophy in terms of iterating, but I don't like talking about it as a failure, because I think that sets up this perfection idea.
Yeah.
And so rather than thinking like an A- is a bad thing, right?
Right.
And
you could also do, depending on your grades, it's so funny because I actually picked A-, A+, but honestly, if we're really being honest with ourselves,
it's C versus A.
No, it's not C.
No.
Well, there's grade inflation. No one gets it. Basically, a C these days is an F. When I was going in school, if I got straight C's, I would be in the bottom 10%.
Really?
That's just how grade inflation works. But I would have done more A+, B+, right?
Yeah.
But B+ implies that there are probably more errors. So A+ is a much more reasonable standard that you can at least strive for, where you're admitting some faults.
No, you mean A-.
You're A-, yeah. A-, A+. Where at least, so like A-, you're admitting some
but
faults. It's not
good.
perfect, but it's still good, right? Whereas B+ is like, well, it's pretty good, but there were some issues here and there. So, honestly, if we're all being honest with ourselves, it's probably A+, B+.
All right, so as we get to the end of this episode, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Can you give us like one or two things? If someone says, I like this idea, I want to do it, but it seems a little foreign to me. I'm not Guthrie.
Yeah.
This is not my normal mode.
Yeah.
And this might be impossible for you because this is your normal mode. But if you have someone for whom this is not their normal mode, and so I have a couple questions. So one is an individual who would like to try out this thinking or like to try this out. What would you suggest to them? What would be something practical that they could do either the next time they're starting a project or in the middle of the one they're already on? So
here's my suggestion. Take a situation that you find yourself in very often. Okay? A regular project that your team does or that you do. I mean, whatever you have control over. Do you have any particular? I'm trying to think of a good example, but it's failing me. Anyways, whatever it is, something that you do on a regular basis. Okay.
Okay.
And time and rate yourself.
Let's say. All right, I'll give you a specific example. Let's say you are in charge at work of doing the monthly meeting.
Yeah.
Every month, people from the different teams come together and do an update for everyone about it, and you're in charge of that meeting, like putting the meeting on and planning it, and making sure the meeting goes well.
Okay. So what I would suggest.
Yeah.
Is just do it the way you normally do it.
Okay.
Okay. And then rate it. Get some information. Rate it. First of all, measure the amount of time
it takes you.
And in hours is great, but if you just want to give it like, okay, this was like a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Compared to the normal project I do, you can do that as well. Okay.
Okay.
Rate it on the terms of effort.
Yeah.
So this is how much effort I put in.
Right.
And it's not necessarily, and that can be in two parts, right? That can be the amount of like actual like grind it took, the amount I was worried about it, right? The amount I had to push through. But also just in like, this was like a big part of my day. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, most importantly, rate the outcome.
The outcome.
In your own words, like how well you think it went, and then and how much how much the outcome was, how well it was perceived by your boss, by your this, by your that, right?
Okay.
Were people fine with it? Okay.
Yeah.
And then try to do it A-, with the focus being, I'm just going to get this done as efficiently and as great as possible. And if I'm working with someone else, I'm telling them the strategy, and we're just going to get it done and work on something else, right? And we'll just blow through it, okay? And do the measurements.
And that's good.
Right? And if at the end the outcome has the same grade and it's taken you half the time,
right?
Well, maybe the results are in the pudding.
That's really practical. I like it.
And here's the way you go to your boss, right? So imagine that meeting I was talking about earlier, right? Where you go into the corner office and they're like, "Well, how did this go?"
Yeah.
And you say, "Well, we didn't try that hard, and went fine. It wasn't particularly spectacular, and the client was perfectly happy with it. And we did this entire other project like a month ahead of schedule."
Yeah.
Right. So so like that, and there you go, and you're done. Right. So you can. That's the flip side.
So I was gonna, because my next question was, so that was a practical thing you could do. The first one you answered was, what could you practically do to yourself, with yourself? And then my next question was going to be, what could you practically do with the organization? But I think you just answered that, is you could actually start to share this data and information with your boss. Now, I'm thinking, though, of course, you know me, right? What am I always thinking about, which is, how could we teach this in a workshop? But we could, right?
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
This could be,
I've already been thinking of the outline for this one.
I think it would be really powerful to bring your whole team. I mean, maybe you can't, if you work in a large organization, I don't know that you want to tackle getting the whole company to go this way, but
it's a culture thing. I mean, again, it just takes
a culture thing.
It takes accepting death.
But it also takes very practically, I think, these measurements that I think you could have 3 ratings, and just get people to be, because the data will set you free, right?
The data will set you free.
Let's close with one thought, because this reminded me when you were talking. When you were giving your practical things, I was reminded of. I heard someone who coaches CEOs, new CEOs. So when you have someone in an organization who
will hopefully be me shortly,
who's becoming a CEO in a large organization, and they've not been a CEO before. Okay, so this is the idea of, if you take someone who's, at a pretty high level in an organization, but they've never been the CEO, what's hard for them to learn. And I remember him saying that one of the things that is one of the most important lessons, and sometimes one of the hardest lessons, is for them to learn what to spend time on and what to just let go of. And I just remember in the times in my career when I've worked with, for other companies and have gone up a notch in management. I remember in one particular case, just, I was kind of overwhelmed by the level of work I had now. And I had all these things I had been doing, and teams I had been coordinating and, just lots of stuff that throughout the organization. And I couldn't do it all. There's no way I was going to do this new level of management responsibility and do all that stuff. And I didn't have anyone to delegate it to, in some cases. And so I remember just letting some of it go and being absolutely amazed at how much a difference it did not make to anyone. All these things that I had been doing that I thought were so critical to the organization and to communication and to the teamwork. And there were a shockingly large number of them that when nobody did them anymore, it had no measurable impact on anyone.
And
it was a little sobering, and even I mean, it bothered me, because I thought this stuff was so important.
And a lot of times, if you, like, let's say you do some stuff, right? And you are an expert in your industry, okay?
Yeah.
And everyone around you is an expert in blah, 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 right? So if you do what you would consider, bad or quick or sloppy work, right? You're maybe being judged by the other people you're working next to, right?
Yeah.
And the client who gets it would never in a million, trillion, billion years ever notice a difference.
Right.
Right? Like, okay,
right.
great.
It's your
it works.
peers.
It looks good. Thanks.
This goes back to the self stories.
Yeah.
And our egos, right? And how we're viewed by others. And
yeah, no, and it happens like all the time. I remember when we were getting these business cards made by this perfectionist studio. And the Kimberly's like, hey, we're really sorry. Like some of these are like off center, right? and
they were off center by the amount
it was like 2,000th of an inch, right? And it's just a logo in like a blank. It's not like it's lined up with anything. It's just like the size of the card was like 0.2 thousandths of an inch small. I was like I could not. Okay, like maybe now that you say something, I guess I can see that maybe one side is like very slight, right? But I would like never, ever, ever notice. And not only would I never notice, the people I'm giving these business cards to really would never notice. They really don't care. So it's like
they're gonna judge you,
right? But they're do you want us to like do them over? I was like, no, it's fine, it's fine. So but they see the error, right? They've messed up, right? Because they go through the process.
So letting go of perfection.
Yeah. It's hard to let go, and it's hard for
just accept death.
Well, yeah, but and I think the hardest part is, right, to get ahead, right, to be in good favor in the eyes of your bosses,
your peers, your bosses, yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times it's not about results. It's about what people think about you.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
So that's tough. So if you're a boss and you can get your team to buy in, I think that's really important. But I think that's like that with almost any initiative, right? Like if you don't have the buy-ins of the higher ups, like it goes nowhere.
Right.
Which I think we've seen time and time.
Yeah. Well, Guthrie, thank you so much for explaining the A-, A+ idea.
I feel like this is my this is like my charity work for the year. I'm saving.
And except that I think we should put that workshop together.
Yeah,
so if any of you would like a workshop to learn how to do this,
Yeah, we'll come up with all kinds of fun exercises.
All right. And let me encourage everyone, as I always do at the end, if you have comments, you want to tell us your perfection, non-perfection stories, or you have ideas about future podcast episodes, please email us at
info@theteamw.com.
Hey, Guthrie, thanks a lot.
Yes.
Talk to you soon.
That's good. Thank you so much. Everyone, I hope you have a great week.
Bye.